You're listening to the Get Meal Prep Show, a podcast about meal planning strategies, improving your nutrition, and getting dinner on the table. You know that this is the podcast for you if you've ever thought, oh no, it's 3 o'clock and I have no idea what's for dinner. We dive deep into meal planning methods and meal planning strategies that help you prepare healthy home-cooked meals that don't leave you feeling like a slave in the kitchen. I'm your host, Susan Watson, registered dietitian, lifestyle nutrition coach, and meal planning strategist for the online course, Get Meal Prepped. My co-host, Andrea Hardy, is a registered dietitian and she helps people improve their relationship with food. Together, we have formed the Get Meal Prepped method that helps people improve their eating habits by cooking real food and not relying on convenience food products. Aside from our online course, you can work with us via our one-on-one coaching package services. You can find links to our packages in the show notes below this recording. We're so happy to have you here today and share this episode with you. If you find this episode helpful in your journey to become healthier, we would love to hear from you too. So please let us know how your meal planning is going by leaving a review on iTunes, subscribing to our channel on YouTube, or sharing this episode with friends or coworkers, or maybe even family. It's really easy to leave a review. You just leave a review right from your podcast app. Simply search the Get Meal Prep Show, click reviews, and then write a review. We would love to hear from you.
Today on the show, we had the lovely Getty Stewart. One of our counseling dietitians at A Little Nutrition, Nita Sharda of Carrots and Cake, told me that I need to get Getty on the show. So after a few months of stalking her on her email list, I got the courage to connect with her and see if she would come on my show. So thankfully, Getty said yes, and I'm pleased to have her here today. Getty Stewart is a professional home economist who shares tasty recipes and home cooking skills through workshops, TV appearances, and her food blog, GettyStewart.com. She's a cookbook author, founder of Fruit Share. She's a mom and an avid veggie gardener. Today, we want to talk about the blog post that Getty wrote, How to Meal Plan to Save Money and Eat Healthy. So today she's going to share some of her favorite tips and practices for meal planning that will help you stick to your budget, but also eat healthy. Let's get to it.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today we're going to be talking about how to meal plan to save money and how to eat healthy. Today I have Getty Stewart here in the show. Hi Getty, how's it going?
Hi Susan, thanks for having me. Doing quite well, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So let's get right into our topic for today, and it's all about meal planning to save money and eat healthy. And I guess in some of the other episodes we've always talked about meal planning for the health benefits of it, but really you can also save a ton of money. So a bit of background information about myself. When I was just a cook by the seat of my pants type of person, I was probably overspending about $400 a month in groceries because I like to cook by how I feel that day. And what was happening then was I would go to the store and buy too much food, or I would buy the added stuff that was at the checkout that maybe I didn't necessarily need. I had no plan, and I would just go to the store and cook by or shop by what I felt like that day. When I sat down and started meal planning, I found that it made a huge difference in how much I was able to save. So I looked at it about being $400, which is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about how you got into meal planning.
Well, I'm not typically a very detailed planning kind of person. Okay. So my start in meal planning was very general, very sketched out. Like I would, when I would be making a grocery list, I'd jot down a couple of meal ideas. It's like, yeah, we're going to have spaghetti and we'll have some chicken and maybe we'll have a chickpea curry or something like that. And I just jot down some ideas. And that worked fine for the way that we were living and cooking, and that just worked beautifully. And then the kids started getting older and having more activities, and it's like, oh, well, I can't make a curry the night that daughter is going to dance and the son's going to cadets and Daryl's away and so my planning had to change a little bit to accommodate more the busy, hectic schedule. And so I had to think more about, well, soup would be a good thing so that the kids can serve themselves or take a thermos. And so I started planning more with that in mind as well. And I thought, well, rather than recreate the wheel every time, I came up with a little checklist and a little form that I could easily plug things in. And so that's what I'm using now.
Excellent, excellent. So basically it evolved out of necessity because you wanted to still eat healthy, but there was no way you're going to have time to eat home-cooked meals with being a busy schedule. So how old are your kids now?
So they are 14 and 16. Okay. So at the age where they're going further distance from home. And so there's a lot of driving around and taking kids here and there. Yeah. But they're also old enough to make a lot of their own meals, or to at least piece things together, heat things up. And so we make meals that they can easily do that with.
Yeah. That's I'm doing a little bit of recon here because my kids are 4 and 6. Yeah. So I've always been interested in asking people who have kids that are in that next stage, so that I can get an idea of, what I need to look forward to or start planning for, because, you don't really get that heads up. So I would assume that maybe a little bit more help in the kitchen, or a little bit more independence, but also maybe a little bit more busy, all at the same time. So yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to know. So what were some of your struggles? And, I guess when you started doing all this meal planning, and right now, how has meal planning really improved your life? And, what's the main reason you would never go back to how it used to be?
Well, I love being in the kitchen, and I love cooking, and I do, end up piecing things together. I don't necessarily follow a recipe to the T. So I still like my independence and freedom to add and subtract as I want from my meal plan. I think that's really important, that we allow ourselves that. But the thing I don't like about cooking every day for a family is that age-old question of, what am I going to make? What am I going to make? What am I going to make? That's the hardest part of it all for me. And once I have the idea, I'm good to go. But coming up with that idea was always the stumbling block. And so, I'd have some ideas on a list, and now that question, more often than not, it isn't a worry, because I have a good idea of what I'm going to make. If I want to switch Tuesday with Thursday, no problem. I know I have the groceries in the fridge to do that. I know I can adapt and still have a little bit of creativity. But for the most part, I don't have to worry throughout the entire day. It's like, supper's coming. What am I going to make?
So you've effectively resolved that panic of, what am I going to make for dinner every night, by having your list ahead. So in our meal planning course, we call that our master meal list. And people that I've talked to that have taken the course have said that that's really what the game changer is. Because if you know what's for supper, at least 3 or 4 days in advance, you know what to take out, maybe what you can repurpose. If you're out of a grocery item, you can, pick up that one item. And, if anybody who hasn't started meal planning wants to start meal planning, I would say that just coming up with 3 or 4 master meal list recipe ideas is so key to getting started, because if you don't know what you're going to cook, you're really at ground zero. So yeah. Okay, great. And what are some of the biggest complaints you hear from people when it comes to meal planning?
Well, I think people are afraid that it's going to take too much time, and it's boring to sit down and kind of figure out. And, it's just a habit that you need to get into. And sure, the first couple of times is not that much fun. But throughout the week, you'll notice that, oh my gosh, that's actually paying off for me. That's a real good payoff for that investment of time on a Sunday night, or whenever you choose to make your plan. You'll see the payoffs throughout the week, and that feeling sort of propels you to keep going and going, oh yeah, that did feel really good.
Yeah, I I agree. I hear people tell me, oh, I don't want to spend 8 hours in the kitchen on a Sunday. And they think that it is going to consume a ton of time. But I think you can spend a couple hours on a weekend and prep up and save yourself the 8 hours throughout the week easily, whether it's saving your time doing dishes or just the fact that you're not running to the store all the time. I really would like to debunk the fact that meal planning takes a lot of time. I think, if anything, meal planning saves a lot of time. So that's true. And I guess the other thing, we've been talking a lot about forming habits and the behaviors behind forming habits. And one of the things that we've been telling our clients is that good habits have immediate consequences. So your good habit of being in the kitchen and spending time cooking might be taking away from sitting in front of the TV and, maybe going out with friends. And so you feel that negative consequence right away. But good habits also, or I guess in the long run, you're going to feel the benefit of a good habit down the road. So the delayed benefit is, getting to work and being like, whoa, my lunch is cooked and I just have to heat it up and I don't have to worry, or my dinner's planned. So that delayed benefit is really hard to work around because you don't see those immediate consequences of your good behaviors right away. So yeah, I think that we could save time for sure in the kitchen. So today we're going to be talking about meal planning and how it can save money as well as eating healthy. So you wrote an amazing blog post that I signed up for your email newsletter when I got the recommendation to follow you, and was kind of creeping you for a while, reading your content, because it's just super important that I feel that the people we have on our show are people that have the same views as well as know their stuff. And I would have to say you really do know your stuff.
Thank you.
So we'll have links to your website and where you can sign up for Getty's newsletter in the show notes below. So make sure you take a look for that. Now, Getty's going to tell us her 10 tips on how to go about meal planning to save money. So let's get into it.
Yeah, you bet. So the saving money part, it's definitely when you go to the grocery store, you have a plan, you stick to it, you buy only what you need. But it's also the reducing the number of trips to the grocery store, because every time you go to the grocery store, you buy just a couple of things even that you were maybe not intending to buy. So if we can reduce the number of trips to the grocery store and know exactly what we're going in for, then we're well ahead of the game. So definitely a meal plan helps in that regard, let alone the avoiding any food waste, because you know what you need to buy and how much of it you need to buy. So the first tip is definitely carve out a little bit of time in your week to make that meal plan. And we just talked about, it sounds like it's going to be boring and long and not a lot of fun. But this is a chance for you to chat with your family about, hey, what do you guys want to eat this week? If your family's like mine, they're not going to be that interested. But, you can hold that against them later on when you're preparing their not favorite meal and say, well, I asked you on Sunday and this is so there you go. But definitely make time to make a plan and keep those plans. Because they create that master list for you. So it just gets easier and easier and easier. And as you're planning, you're creating a grocery list as well. So my second tip is take inventory. So think about what's in your freezer right now, whether it's the one above your fridge, or if it's, the basement freezer, and make sure that you're incorporating the meals that you've prepped before or leftovers that you've had from other meals. Make sure you're incorporating that into your meal plan. The week's meals don't always have to be from scratch. You can use your frozen food. You can use your leftovers. And I think it's important that we do incorporate them, because otherwise they'll get lost in the bottom of that freezer. Also check what's in the garden and what's in your pantry, and make sure that you're incorporating those into your meal plan as well. If you're the type of person who enjoys looking at flyers, take a look at that as well, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a great tip. I was speaking with a client a couple weeks ago, and I had asked her, like, do you know what you have in your pantry? Do you know what you have in your freezer? And she's like, not really. And it's really hard to incorporate all of those food items that you have in your freezer, your pantry, or your fridge if you don't have a good inventory. So in our course, we talk about having a freezer inventory list, and we break it down into like raw components. So that would be you buy a flat of chicken and you cut it up and you put it into a freezer bag. Then we have cooked components. So say you cooked up extra chicken and then you froze it. Then we have cooked ready to, or raw ready to use. So maybe you put chicken in a bag that's marinated. And then the last category that we get people to break down their freezer inventory to is cooked ready to serve. So think of making up a lasagna and you just take it out and put it in the oven to heat it up. So when you're meal planning, it's so easy to just take a look at your freezer inventory list and just and plan from that. So I love your tip about using your garden. And I think last year I was probably faulted for missing out on a few zucchinis that came up really fast, and I could have used them. But yeah, keeping an idea of what's coming out through your garden. So that's definitely a great tip.
Yeah. And that goes into, it sort of ties into the next one as well, where you're checking with everyone's calendar. So if you know that, you've just done your inventory, you have that frozen lasagna ready, that Wednesday is an incredibly busy day for everyone. No one will have time to prep anything. That's the day when that freezer meal will come in really handy. So you can just plot it into your meal plan. On Tuesday night, you'll remember, or you'll see on your meal plan, hey, don't forget to take out the lasagna, or make notes to someone, put the lasagna in the oven at 4 and we're good to go. So definitely tip number 3 is check everyone's calendar, so you know who's going to be where, when, at what time, what kind of meals will work for you on a particular day.
Absolutely, that's great.
Yeah. Number 4, and this kind of ties into the garden as well, is choose seasonal foods. So if you're interested in saving money and having variety and eating the most flavorful food, using seasonal ingredients, particularly if they're local, is ideal, because you'll get the best flavor, you'll get the best price. So check what's in season, check your flyers, check the local farmers markets and garden markets to see what can you get that's fresh and local and was so delicious, and include those foods into your meal plan. So even though I know we can get strawberries in January in Canada here, they're not going to be the most flavorful. So save your strawberries for June and July and just make all things strawberries at that time.
Yeah, I'm out of the city in rural Manitoba here, and we have those you pick strawberry places. And one of my I would say money saver tip is, if you want fresh, wonderful tasting strawberries, is to go with your kids and pick a whole bucket load of strawberries, flash freeze them, and then you've got them in your freezer. But again, remember, put them on your freezer inventory list, or you're not going to remember that they're there.
Yeah.
But that's a great way to extend the seasonal foods.
Yep. Tip number 5 is plan with healthy eating in mind. So this is pretty obvious. I don't think a lot of people are going to write a meal plan saying have junk food, have fast food on Tuesday night. But really think about what is it that your goal is in your overall eating strategy, and make that very conscientious part of your overall meal planning. So for us, eating more fruits and veg, getting whole grains and more fiber is sort of on top of my list right now. And so every time I'm looking for ways to what kind of veg are we eating all day today? How are we going to incorporate what kind of whole grains, and over the entire week, what does that look like? Are we getting a good mix of those kinds of foods? So really, being conscientious about that.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I think there's a lot of information online, and books that have strategies for meal planning, but when you take a look at the actual recipes in the meals, they're just all, I call them brown foods or white foods, where it's just, like a pasta casserole and there's maybe a cup of peas sprinkled in there, or something that's all potatoes with even just a few chunks of ham, or very few vegetables. So when you're meal planning, for sure, make sure that we recommend 2 cups of vegetables for lunch and supper, and making sure that you have a good balance of protein and carbohydrates in your meals. And that's really important when it comes to meal planning too, because you don't want to just run out of vegetables midweek, which I hear is one of our followers' main issues. So they're good till Wednesday and they run out of vegetables. So buy more vegetables.
Yeah. One of the strategies my kids use, and again, they're 14 and 16, so they're old enough, but they're also teenagers and they don't want to spend a lot of time in the kitchen. So we always have frozen veggies in the freezer. And I say, if nothing else, just add peas, eat carrots, eat the corn, whatever. Just add some sort of veg. And of course, we have lots of usually pre-cut veggies in the fridge. So they've always got carrot sticks and cucumbers and cauliflower on the go in the fridge, but sometimes they just want something different. So
yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Tip number 6 is focus on TNT recipes, and I don't mean dynamite. I mean tried and true recipes. So sometimes we think maybe the meal planning is not that interesting and exciting. Other times you kind of get on this wild and crazy swing and it's like, oh my gosh, I found the best recipes. I found this recipe. I want to try that. And then I want to try one of these recipes and one of these recipes. And you end up in your meal plan for the week looks like an exotic trip throughout the world. And they're all new recipes to you. And the chances of you actually implementing that during the week are pretty slim, because you might be all gung-ho and excited on your meal planning night, but during the week, let's face it, life gets busy, gets fast. You probably won't be able to keep up the energy to try a new recipe every single night of the week. Mm-hmm. So stick to some of your family favorites that the kids will love, that how to prepare without having to read the ingredient list that detailed, or the instructions that detailed, that you can just sort of whip up on the fly, and you'll feel a lot more comfortable and confident. So of course, throw in a new recipe here and there, but don't set yourself up with an entire week of new recipes.
I have to tell everyone a little bit of a story about this, because I'm going, been there. So we recommend in our course to only try one new recipe a week if you're going to. The reason why is exactly what you said. You're going to get exhausted. I am totally to be faulted for getting all my cookbooks out and finding 5 new recipes that I'm going to do for the week and get all excited, and then it just flopping. The other thing that I think is really important to remember is that though tried and true is so important to think, remember TNT. I love that tip, because a new recipe doesn't always mean it's going to be a winner, right? So now you've got a 5 days of recipes that you've never tried before, and the chances that all 5 are going to be a flop is very slim, but I've done it. I have found 5 recipes, and the whole thing was then everybody, husband, kids, even myself, are like, I hate the meal, and everyone's down, and supper time was a mess, and nobody was happy, and then they just all wanted a snack all night. So it's really important to try one new recipe a week to build up your master meal list, but don't go crazy and do 5 in a week. And the other time that's a good time to try this new recipe is on the weekend, because sometimes new recipes take a little bit more time and can be a little bit harder, and doing it on time when you have more time is really good. So I love that tip. That is something that rings true to me for definitely screwing up. I still have to remind myself, tried and true for the week, and incorporate one new recipe. Try it on the weekend first.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll mix bits and pieces together. So if I'm introducing a new soup, for example, to the family, I will put aside of our favorite biscuits or spinach cheddar cheese biscuits, so that there's something that I know everyone's going to love, and they're excited sitting down to the table because it's biscuits, and then they're more likely to try the new soup because they've got something to back it up. Yeah. And so that kind of combo as well. So, or you have your favorite salad and you're introducing a new way to prepare the meat or whatever. So that sandwich effect. Yeah. Tip number 7 is involve your family. Get the whole family involved in the meal planning ideas, but also with some of the meal prep. And right from the very get-go, as when they're young and little, get them involved in being in the kitchen. So it may be that they're just setting the forks on the table, or maybe even just the spoons. But somehow they're involved in the whole process of that meal making, and then getting them involved in ripping the lettuce, or putting the spaghetti in the water, or using that fancy little spoon to do something. To mash the potatoes was one of the first jobs that the kids had. So get them involved. This is probably when my kids were 6 to 8 was maybe a little easier than it is now that they're 14 to 16 and they're more opinionated. But giving them more autonomy now. So last night I said to my son, "You're in charge of supper." And so he made supper, and I said, "You know what we value in healthy food, right?" He says, "Yes, Mom, I'll make some veg." So getting them involved and giving them the independence and the autonomy to make some decisions along the way, depending on their age and so forth. So
that's really good, because again, like, I'm writing this down because I'm going to remember that when my kids are older. So just a little side note here. I'm sure you know that March is Nutrition Month, and if you're listening to this later on, Nutrition Month is all about talking about the potential of food that goes beyond nourishment. So this week we're talking about getting kids food skills, and how a lot of kids are missing those food skills. Your kids probably have a lot of food skills, being a home economist, and mine are definitely growing up having food skills, but many kids aren't. So that's you can see the poster that I got here in the background, and if you're listening to this, we have a Nutrition Month poster talking about the potential of food. And if parents are not getting their kids in the kitchen right now, and they're afraid to have their kids in the kitchen, what tips would you give to get them cooking in the kitchen, or starting to develop some of those food skills? Because we do know kids who are involved in cooking and shopping and preparing foods eat better, they learn better, and they're ultimately healthier kids. What tips would you give our listeners right now on maybe how you got your kids comfortable in the kitchen, and if they're now at 14 and are able to cook a whole supper? I know some teenagers still can't do that. So how did you do that, and what tips do you have for our listeners? It's just a very gradual process, and we started when they were very little, and just involved them in everyday cooking. And I'm not afraid to let my kids use knives, and even when they were younger, we just used the regular knives that we use, and just observed and watched and taught how to use them. But it's also what you're comfortable with. And so if you're not comfortable having them chop the veggies, let them peel the veggies or wash the veggies, or just the tiniest little bits and pieces of the job, and just have them be around with you. And I know that makes things harder as a mom or dad trying to get supper on the table. It takes more time when your kids are helping than when they're not helping. But every time that we do that, we're giving them a step in the right direction for their future cooking skills and so forth. And then, yes, eventually they'll be making supper for you. So again, there's that future payoff. But just the tiniest thing, and maybe just
If they're very little, having them be in the kitchen with you while you're preparing the food, so that they're at least in the environment with you, and they can be banging pots and pans and so forth. But they know that the kitchen's a cool place, and that's where the family hangs out at supper time.
Yeah, I think that's super important. So, the tip here is don't shoo your kids out of the kitchen. If they're starting to annoy you, give them a task. Get them to do something. And my little ones just started by shredding lettuce. They thought that was the most fun thing in the world. They're now to the stage where they can cut peppers, and get them to cut a banana. With a butter knife. It's super simple. So yeah, we want to make sure kids have those cooking skills. And as you mentioned, the payoff is when they're older, they're going to be cooking for us. I'm so pumped about that.
Yeah, there you go. Tip number 8. Consider theme nights. So if you are still struggling with how do I even come up with the ideas of what to make if I'm not supposed to use new recipes during the week? What am I supposed to make? How do I come up with the ideas? So one of the things that we've tried, and we stick to it for a while, so these are certainly not written in stone, is that we've used theme nights, or I've used theme nights for myself, just to come up with the ideas. So I think of, for example, Mondays might be our meatless Monday night. Tuesdays is for tacos. Wednesdays is for soup or some kind of kid-friendly meal. Thursdays might be breakfast for supper meals. Pizza Friday, that one we still stick to at this house. That's probably been like a 7-year tradition for us. Is always Friday is homemade pizza night, and then we have Fend for Yourself Saturday, because that's the day Mom doesn't cook, and so everyone's on their own and can scrounge together whatever is left over. And then we have Big Dinner Sunday, which is usually the start of the meal plan for the next week. So if we have chicken dinner Sunday night, then I know that there's a chicken soup, and that there's probably some lunch sandwiches or wraps or salad in that coming out of that dinner as well. So. So those are some of the theme nights that we use, and they come and go. Like, we don't always have tacos on Tuesday, but for a while there was a good couple of months when that's what it was, and so we grew out of that. But some of them still stand true. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Excellent. I think our themes, I've used them, but maybe like 2 or 3 during the week. On Saturdays, you have the Fend for Yourself. Mine is the throw whatever I have left over into a soup. So yeah. I'm a big fan of the Instapot. I usually end up, if I've got leftover like half a cup of pasta or half a cup of rice, I'm turning that into a soup or a stew, and just to use everything up. But I'm sure it's going to be Fend for Yourself when they're a bit older. Right now, yeah. They're just going to go to the cupboard, and that's not going to be a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Tip number 9 is plan to cook once and eat twice. So there are definitely meals where it is easy to double up and put one in the freezer, so that when next time you're adding to your inventory, so that next week when you're looking at that, you say, oh, right, there's that other meal. So any soups and stews, casseroles are certainly great for doubling up and making an extra one. Spaghettis and chilies certainly are good meals for that as well. So think about that. Oftentimes when we make spaghetti sauce at our house, we think, okay, spaghetti sauce tonight, day after or the following day will be chili night. So we take that sauce as the base and then turn that into chili. And so we're already thinking about 2 meals out of one. So, and whether that goes in the freezer or whether you eat that right away, whatever. If you're making mashed potatoes, it never hurts to make an extra little dollop of mashed potatoes, and then that also can turn into tomorrow night's meal or a lunch or leftovers. So, yeah.
Well, it's definitely key. I often tell our clients that I only cook 3 days a week. That's mostly because I'm planning in advance. Cook once, eat twice. For me, it's like cook once, eat 3 or 4 times, using my time-saving appliances. But I think too, it's that planning ahead piece that's super important. So a lot of people are not thinking beyond their next meal. If it's breakfast, they haven't even thought about lunch. If it's lunch, they have no idea what's for supper. Never mind what's for supper 3 days from now. So that plan once, cook a couple times solves a lot of that at the same time.
Yeah. And having that meal plan, if you've got out your food processor to chop or grate some cheese or whatever, and the meal a couple of nights down the road also includes that particular ingredient, well, if you've already have the equipment out, dirty it once, clean it once, do extras now, put it away for when you're going to need it. And that's true with, I find like we're always chopping celery, carrots, and onions. Well, if I can do those once per week rather than every single night of the week because we're always using them, then I can save time that way as well.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah. And the final one is keep and reuse your meal plans. So tuck them away if you want. If you like keeping lists and making notes on them, definitely write down which of the recipes you enjoyed, what worked really well, what didn't work, or just tuck them away and have them on reference for the next time that you make your meal plan. And the ideas will generate a lot more quickly, and soon your meal planning will be done in no time at all, and you'll feel really good about it.
Yeah, I think meal planning, when I first started, it's like a habit. You're learning a new skill, whether you're learning basketball or you're learning hockey or some sort of sport. You have to go to practice, and you get better at more practices you go to. And that's the same with meal planning. The more you practice, the faster you get, the better it is. And I think some weeks I can actually do it in my head. I still do like to write it down, but when I'm really busy, I do have my backups that are in my head that work really well. So when it comes to, I guess, we're looking at, saving money, where are some areas that you feel people are overspending and in life, in their eating, and how meal planning can actually save them money? And if you have any ideas of roughly, costs associated to that. I talked about how I figure I'm saving about $400 a month in not buying useless stuff that went to waste. But what are some areas that you think people are overspending right now, and by getting into the kitchen and doing some cooking, they'll save some money?
I think for those last minute, brainwaves when it's like I can't even think of what we're going to have for supper tonight. People will end up going out to eat or ordering in to eat, and so right away we know that the nutrition of those meals is going to go down, and typically the price for those meals is going to go way up. So for sure the spending is a lot higher. I don't know the exact numbers on what that would be, but definitely if you're ordering out or going out, you're going to be spending more per meal than you would if you were cooking from scratch at home.
Well, I definitely think that eating out, a typical family of four is probably going to cost about $100. And that's, just at a regular restaurant. Maybe a little bit less if you were at a fast food establishment. But what we do know about calories is that when you're eating out at a restaurant, most meals are about 3 times the amount of calories your body needs in a meal. So, and sodium, usually one meal at a restaurant is your entire day of sodium. So for health, each time you eat out, you want to keep that in mind. And money-wise, I'm positive if you converted the money that you would spend at a restaurant into shopping, it would be you would be able to get 2 or 3 meals out of the amount that you would spend. So I think for sure you can save a lot of money that way. I also find that going to the store last minute when you don't have anything planned, even the convenience foods that you're buying are a lot more expensive, like the rotisserie chicken versus, cooking your own. And again, the nutrition behind that as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I think that wraps it up. Do you have any other tips that you want to share with us that you can think of as we were talking about it? It's okay if you don't.
Yeah, I think my tips are exhausted for her right now. But yeah, it's like you said, it's a habit, it's a practice that you get into, and the more you do it, the easier it gets. And it's okay if there are weeks when I don't do meal planning. Yep. I usually end up regretting it by Thursday, going, oh, if I would have had that, it would have been so much easier. But it's okay. You know what? Just do it next week and get back to that habit. So no need for guilt or remorse for not doing it. Just do it when you can. Give it a try. Get into the habit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the key is just to get started. And even if you only get to Wednesday with your meal plan, you gave it your best shot and then by Wednesday everything fell apart. The whole point of forming a habit is to get started. And every time you get started and fall off and get started again, you're creating a habit and you'll get better at it. And the all or nothing attitude of making sure that your meal plan is 100% and perfect is going to trip you up. I think that it's taken me years to actually get, through meal planning where it's successful and it's a breeze. But it was a lot of failures, a lot of screw-ups, but that's why I feel like I can call myself a meal planning strategist, because I live and breathe it and really know most of the hang-ups that people are going to encounter. So I'm sure yourself too, like many more years experience cooking for families. So it's really good. So thank you so much for sharing all your wonderful tips. And again, we're going to share all of your social links in the show notes below if you want to connect with Getty, and we'll hopefully meet you in person one day.
You bet. Thanks so much for having me, Susan.
Take care.
Take care.